Hey there, if you're enjoying this podcast, please take a moment to leave a review and to follow or subscribe. Don't forget to share with anybody that you think might be interested. Your support is greatly appreciated. Word of mouth is incredibly powerful, and it's the best way for us to reach more people and grow this wonderful community. Thanks again for listening. Hey there. Recently, something happened in my life that even in my wildest of dreams, I wouldn't have worried about because it seemed so impossible. And although it terrifies me in this moment as it stares me right in the face, had you asked me if I ever worried it might happen, I'd have told you that I wouldn't ever have considered it as something to be afraid of. Primitive instinct maybe, but never a conscious fear. Although it happened in the mortal world just a few weeks ago, it was years ago that I already knew it, deeply in my soul, but chose not to listen to my inner knowing, especially since it hadn't yet materialized. And so, I birthed a powerful limiting belief instead, one that believed that what my intuition was telling me wasn't true. And then I went about living my life accordingly. Now I know you're likely conjuring all sorts of scenarios about what it might have been that happened to me. We do that when we don't have all the facts. But the details of the story are never as important as the insight gained through reflection. Just as I do in coaching, I don't coach my client's story. I listen more deeply to what stories they're telling themselves. And boy, oh boy, had I been telling myself a story for a very, very long time. It's only today, after spending some processing, that a glimmer of learning is beginning to emerge. Often the universe offers us a lesson that we don't see at first, and sometimes we miss them altogether. I'm still in the classroom of my own consciousness on this one, but there is something that bears looking at that seems cryptic at best, but maybe we can unpack something here. So around the time that this all happened, I found myself at the grocery store trying to focus. I was distracted and distraught and trying to do something ordinary that might take my mind off of how I was feeling. When I was checking out, the cashier, who I'm usually light and breezy with and enjoy practicing my French, she smiled at me and said, "Bonjour, ça va?" I blurted out, "It's been a real shit show of a week." When I got home and was putting away the groceries, I wondered how on earth I had remembered that we needed Ziploc bags. I rarely buy them, maybe once or twice a year, and it's never something I'd remember, unless I wrote it on a list. But for whatever reason, that day in all my malaise, I had remembered. It really struck me, and I almost even smiled, because I realized the universe was winking at me. Do you remember when I said often the universe offers us lessons that we don't see at first and sometimes we miss them altogether? Well, the Ziploc bags were a lesson delivered in a metaphor. Ziploc bags are used to keep things in. Like a limiting belief, they lock in things that aren't finished. Things that we want to keep healthy and alive and palatable so that we might enjoy them as long as we can. I had locked my limiting belief inside, trying as hard as I could to keep it fresh and alive, to not be contaminated by other things that threatened to spoil it. I was protecting my false truth, because what my intuition knew all those years ago was simply too hard to bear. Isn't it ironic that we ran out of the Ziploc bags just as the terrifying truth came to light? There's a lesson here, to be sure, although I'm still very much the student in this moment. And as for whether or not the lesson is in the irony, as Alanis Morissette sings in her song Ironic, life has a funny way of sneaking up on you. Life has a funny, funny way of helping you out. I'm Lisa Hopkins. Thanks so much for listening. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. And remember to live in the moment. If you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to dive deeper into cultivating a life of creative possibilities with my new book, The Places Where There Are Spaces. It's filled with personal stories and insights to help you embrace living in the moment. You can grab your copy by following the link in the show notes or wherever books are sold. Let's keep the conversation going and growing.